Cheers, guys. Epix 911, welcome to the Elitist Geek. Best beer in 3 days, guys. Best beer in 3 days. So, this is a VR news video. I'm going to have quite a few this week because there's lots of news stuff. I'm waiting on my Vive. That's the other update that I have. And I want to thank you guys before I start for all the suggestions. You guys have honestly given me tons of hope that I could get this resolved. Ultimately, I couldn't. But ultimately, it was one of your suggestions that hopefully sees it resolved. And what I mean by that is, Crazy Kraka, one of the viewers, he put forth Daniel O'Brien's name, whom I contacted, who got back to me and treated me like I had hoped I would be treated when I phoned their customer service. Five Johnny Sack, another viewer, posted about 4.5 hours ago. He was able to reach out to Daniel O'Brien and hopefully also get his issue resolved. But I agree, we shouldn't have to escalate it to a vice president of a company, should we? I mean, that's bullshit. It shouldn't have to get to that point, right? What I don't get is why when this was launched, the higher-ups didn't go, involve customer service to the point and say, look, these early adopters, right, they are supporting our product. We have no critical mass until we sell this thing and it's in the hands of hundreds, thousands, and millions of people. Treat them as VIPs because they truly are our VIPs. They're buying this product arguably at its most expensive price point with very little content. Treat them well. Treat them well. Not only will they return, they're going to spread the word. That message got missed. Maybe there's a few customer service folks, and I'm sure they're hardworking in their intentions, but they haven't been given the ability to resolve stuff. And you don't feel like a VIP. I certainly didn't feel like a VIP for 3 days. I felt like a schmuck with a $1,300 paperweight, right? Jury's out on that. I'm going to update you guys and let you know how I make out. I hope I have my Vive back in a few days, or another Vive, right? So I'm going to find out tomorrow. I'll update you guys. What I promise moving forward on this channel, even if all this stuff is resolved, I want to be able to, use the channel to help others of you who maybe haven't gotten the resolution, right? My crusade doesn't just stop with this. It's going to be something. I want this channel to cover the bad, the good, and the ugly. Cheesy analogy, but it's true, right? And the last 3 days have certainly been ugly, but it's important for you guys to see the good and the bad, help you make more informed decisions, right? And hopefully it changes things for them because they've kind of been called out on social media and they realize that they haven't been treating early adopters like VIPs, right? So keep you guys updated on that and let you know. Also, got an email. The Rift is on its way. It's being shipped. So it'll be interesting. Do I get that before I get my Vive back? I don't know. But as I mentioned to you guys before, for me, it's always about the games, not the hardware. The hardware to me is a means to play the games. That's why I ultimately ordered both, right? The ability to do that, to afford that within my hobby budget, but to support it and ensure I could play any game that struck my fancy, right? So that is definitely something that I'm going to keep updating and do videos on, is both sides of the equation, both pieces of hardware. So I thought that was cool. Let's see when it arrives. Originally it was supposed to be August, and I'd ordered it in the beginning of May. So 4 to 8 weeks ahead, because let's face it, when somebody tells you August, what have you learned to expect, right? Exactly. A day before September rolls around. So 4 to 8 weeks ahead of schedule, fine. And ultimately, that's not as important to me. Obviously, I want it. What's important to me is once I have it, are you going to help me if something goes wrong? I could care less if you, Vive, can get an order out within 72 hours if you don't support it after. I'd rather a company that's honest. Look, it's going to take us 4 to 6 weeks to supply chain this out to you, but we promise we have the means and the backlog, and that's what's taking so long, to support you moving forward. So, all right. Let's talk about some news items now. So, Steam Summer Sale is here. What does that mean? Games cheap. Most of my 200 plus games, 225 plus, have been Steam sale games, winter or summer. There's a ton of VR games up for sale right now, so use some of my past videos, do your own research, and also go to Upload VR. Cool website. I get a lot of my VR news from them. They have a top VR Steam sale list right now, right? Use that, do some more research. What's interesting is their top 3 picks for each platform. So the picks that they had for the Vive included Vanishing Realms, Hover Junker, which I can't wait to play. As soon as the Vive is back, that's a game I'm going to play, and the Gallery. And then for the Rift, they listed Elite Dangerous, Project Cars, and Titans of Space. And any of you Vive owners know that really what they're saying in their top 6 VR picks is if you own a Vive, 5 of those 6 you can play. And I thought that was cool. So again, their opinion, right? You might not ultimately like those games, but I thought that was interesting because it wasn't the other way around. So for a company, you know, Lucky Palmer, who was originally anti-DRM, and now he's kind of, or he was originally, anti, and now he's kind of putting that into practice, and there's been a bit of an uproar about it. It's funny how Gabe with Steam ultimately, and, you know, granted, he's always supported open architecture, is having the better results that way. So it'll be interesting to see how this all plays out. The other thing you can use the Steam sale for is traditional 3D on 2D games. Stuff like Skyrim, Fallout, things that, you know, games that aren't built as VR from the ground up, but work in stuff like VorpX and VireIO. I was this close to getting Fallout 4, working in VireIO before my Vive bit the dust. I'll have videos on that when they come back and let you guys know. So also use it as an opportunity to get those games. Again, they're not built from the ground up, so menu systems, inventory stuff, some of it, you know, to get around it, because it still has that non-VR inventory system, you have to sometimes pull into cinema mode, which can ruin the immersion for sure. If you're okay with that, it just gives you more to play with VR-wise, right? Just remember, it's never going to be as polished. Now, the last thing I wanted to talk about is Noel Bushnel for this video. He is the founder of Atari, and, you know, any older gamers like me, the guy's a legend. Atari is arguably more pivotal. They've been more pivotal in the history and the evolution of consoles and arcade games than any other company, including Nintendo. Nintendo did a lot to bring us out of that dark age, that, you know, great video game crash of '83. But Atari, well, you could say they kind of brought us there because ultimately it was a schlock of craftware that brought Atari down. But they introduced that, the console, etc., in terms of mass market appeal, right? Not always the best tech that wins, because you could argue Coleco and Intellivision were better. He was asked about virtual reality, and he said what makes it different than the early 90s when it failed with the VFX1, which had poor resolution, poor latency, was that now the resolution and the experience is better. And I thought that was a really cool statement, because back then in the 90s, anybody prone to motion sickness at all, plus that horrible resolution, forget about it. But that aesthetic design, you can definitely see the influence in the Rift and the Vive, right? Why he thinks this time is different is that experience. And that's so true. I've messaged a lot of you guys or returned questions back where you've asked me, how high can you crank a game? That's traditional 3D on 2D thinking, because a lot of those settings really don't have the same impact in VR that they do in 3D on 2D. Stuff like ambient occlusion, etc. You can have simple textures in VR, like the zombie simulator that I own, and still have an awesome fluid experience that's all about gameplay. They will still make a game, you know, look slightly better, but not a lot better like they do in 3D on 2D. So keep that in mind. I should have clarified that in the comments. That's the caveat. That no, maybe you can't crank the settings up, but so what? It's not as important. What is important? Get 90 frames per second, right? Hopefully without reprojection. And have low latency. Well, they've addressed the low latency with the wires dangling out of our HMDs and the resolution. So if you can make those two things happen, Project Cars is an awesome experience, right? Because it allows you to focus on the settings that are important in VR. Stuff like super sampling. That's huge, right? Some of that other stuff isn't. So that was neat that this time it's different. and that's not even taking into account 4K in a couple of years. Wow, this is an awesome time. All right, guys, expect lots more news videos. Again, I thank you all for your suggestions and tips, and hope I can give you guys some positive news within the next few days. All right, guys, as always, cheers.